Let your curiosity rise.
Matrix webcast,
Where the human spirit flies. Matrix webcast, where the human spirit flies.
Hey. Hey, welcome to the MedBase webcast. This is Ramana Namaraju. I'm the host. Welcome. We have a Thursday program today, and we're going to introduce. Let me introduce you, my co-host, Dr. Susan Davis. She's joining from Port Moines, Florida. Let me introduce her. Welcome, Susan.
Hello, Ramana. What's happening out there, California?
Yeah.
I feel like you need a little cattle prod. What are we going to do? Turn that frown upside down.
The electric shock, probably. Yeah. So
Come on, we got this.
We need lipid proteins. Maybe that's what it is.
Listen, our conversation this evening is pertinent to every human on the planet. Watching the fats that happen to be floating around your bloodstream and maybe stick in here and stick in there, no bueno. And how about high blood pressure? How about low kidney function? You're talking about half of the world. So good conversations ahead.
Can you introduce it?
Throw in a little God and love. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Introduce Dr. McConnell. Whatever you introduce him. Whatever you know a little bit about him.
Well, we're welcoming Stephen McConnell, and he is notoriously famous for turning bad numbers good. And if that doesn't, it's not a good headline, I don't know what is. So honestly, if your fat numbers are too high and your kidney numbers are too low, this is the fella to talk to. So not only that, he, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more about the details, but you know, he works a lot in the community, and he really is passionate about his God, his church, his people, and the people on the planet, and bringing health to all of us. So, I mean, award-winning conversation. So let's bring him on.
Hey, welcome.
Okay. I'll try to keep the intro brief. I was originally trained to do life support and anesthesia during open heart procedures. And pretty much it was bypass, but valve repair and some cerebral aneurysm procedures. I really learned to dislike it. I never regretted the didactic, the training. So I thought to apply it in a different direction. And it took a few years to get to that point, but two physicians I know invited me in to start lipid clinics at their offices. They're about 2 hours apart. One's quite near me, very large family practice, and the other was strictly adult diabetics. So the case mix index was a lot like you'd see in a large insurer, you know, families as well as adults with internal medicine issues. We were pretty disgusted, no offense to anybody, but inappropriate catheterization rates, stents and otherwise stable people, which is not very appropriate. But it's a lot like nephrology, you know, race to dialysis. There's no significant effort to prevent it except in the primary care level. So we thought, let's do it. And it's very controversial, more so today than it was 30 years ago. We analyzed all the data going back to 1955 on niacin. It was impeccable. Most people haven't even looked at it, not anymore. But Dr. William Castelli at the Framingham showed me how to use it. John Guyton was a big help, and a few other lipidologists. I bought the boarding modules, and I just needed a place to set up my laboratory and determine if this indeed would value patients on a wider level, because we were getting pretty disgusted with the mandate to put everybody on a statin. So we didn't get it right at first. And everyone who's tried to use niacin knows that. So I thought, these guys invented the wheel, who am I? So Dr. Castelli, I had him on the phone. I met him a couple times, and he gave me a grid he used and some tips to walk people through the first week or two. Because after about 2 weeks, if they don't skip a whole day, this notorious side effect. It's called flushing or a hot flash. It's variable in perception. Some people feel like it's prickly heat, like it's sunburn. It's temporary, but it's also reflecting a mechanism that's incredibly important to the body. Anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, vasodilatation. It's just so profound the first hour, many people quit. So you have to educate every patient, and you have to give them tools to manage the side effect, and eventually tachyphylax down. Way less frequent, the time in between episodes goes to a week or 2 weeks, and the intensity when it occurs gets to the point where it's barely noticeable. But I have a tip sheet that'll neutralize it in 5 minutes, and that keeps them from quitting. And it was sort of an act of God. We noticed benefits right away. I thought it would take 3 years, maybe 5 years to see something measurable, because all the old niacin studies are paid for by the NIH. So it's clean data, no industry money, no drug company. And some of the oldest pioneers ran those studies. And to this day, those that are still alive, whether they're retired or not, still defend it, because there's this cabal, which I think is 40% ignorance and 60% greed, to push it out. It works too well. That's the problem. You can't come up with 2 or 3 drugs to do everything that niacin does. And
Stephen, we gotta hold up for just a second, because you went from 0 to 360 and you went right into niacin. So let's back up just a second and let's frame what we're working on here.
Sure.
So
sure.
Who is your ideal patient that walks in, knock, 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 hey, what do I have that I'm not sure how to control, and somebody's telling me I need to take all these pharmaceuticals. What should I do?
Yeah. Well, the first thing you do is determine what their perception is, and you need good laboratory results. You need a urine catch, mainly for proteinuria, albumin creatinine ratio for the kidneys, a battery of lipoproteins. The minimum would be the total atherogenic particle burden, which is reflected with an ApoB, apolipoprotein B. That's all of them. And you need the subset that comes up in families. And I could almost tell it's there by asking questions. Did you have an uncle that had a heart attack before the age of 60? Brother, male relative. Then you ask their personal history. You get the lipoproteins. And I like having triglycerides. There's some information there, but you don't need an LDL because it's pretty worthless these days. It's the particles that cause the problem. When you've got the total particles,
I'm sorry, Stephen, to interject, but they're having uncontrolled high blood pressure. They've been told that maybe they're getting some clogs. I mean, like, what is the physical symptoms? You've gone right into the lab work, but a lot of our audience, I want to know what's the patient signs and symptoms that they're coming to in the first place.
Signs and symptoms usually occur late. In fact, there was an old statement that 40% of the people, their first sign of a heart that they have heart disease at all is sudden cardiac death, because how we determine there's risk is not as effective as it could be. And it's because we're measuring things that the insurance company likes to pay for because they're cheap, but they don't catch the diagnosis early. 90% of kidney disease is caught at stage 4, and then they hand them to a nephrologist. And when it comes to cardiovascular disease, you're looking at a disease that often doesn't have symptoms till it's very advanced: chest pain, difficulty walking. And in the case of cerebral disease, ischemic, transient ischemic attacks like a pre-stroke. All that happens late on. The trick is, if you're lucky enough and they present before they get to that point, you can keep them from getting to that point.
So, okay, now I'm your average Joe. I've got a little hypertension. Maybe I'm compliant, maybe I'm not, but I go and I get my yearly, I get a CBC and a CMP. What are we looking at here? I mean, this is the standard practice. So I know what you're looking at. You just named a bunch of labs that aren't on the CMP and a basic panel.
Well, here's a good way of looking at it from a layman's point of view. If you could improve your lifespan and look into the crystal ball and prevent the heart attack, stroke, dialysis, and all you had to do is about once every year or so order a panel and pay cash for it, $479 is not a lot of money. and those are direct-to-consumer labs. The patient doesn't know what to order, but I do. Then I can find everything that wasn't on what you mentioned, because a comprehensive metabolic profile, a CBC, and a lipid panel leave about 60% of them undiagnosed and about 90% of them with no chronic kidney disease diagnosis. A good example is...
Wait.
Go
You
ahead.
got to let that settle in. You got to let that settle in. 60% missed
Yes.
and 90%,
Kidney disease.
what was the 90%? Kidney disease missed, right? Because we know, like you said, there's stages of kidney disease. I'm sure you know better than 1, 2, 3A, 3B, 4, 5, 6. I'm not sure. But we usually, with all diseases, we're not finding them until much later. So
Right.
how do we, this is a great long story. So I'm trying to knock it back down to the early building blocks so that we know the steps to take, right? So I show up, I'm not sure my hypertension's controlled, not controlled. I'm trying to watch my diet. And by the way, you and I talked about crock pots right before we came on here. I wasn't going to tell you that it's a Mississippi pot roast with a stick of butter on top in the crock. No, it was not my recipe. But diet comes into play. I mean, these people do find you, these people, all of us, any human, there's so many factors. We've been going to the regular doctor. The regular doctor says, see, regular labs. We look at them like, here's your medications. Don't worry, we got 10 medications to help you with this. Good luck, good riddance. Don't eat, a stick of butter on your Mississippi crock pot. So what do you do with these people? Because they're not well and they're about to find out that their kidneys are on the brink of no mas. We've got blockages in our throat, blockages in our heart. What are we supposed to do?
Well, the first thing is you got to give them a reality check and explain to them that the lab work they've been getting is not conclusive and it misses things until they're fulminant and very advanced. And it's important to recognize certain things. Like lately, everybody's talking about Lp(a). Why is that? It's a special particle. It's very prevalent in people of the Asian Indian continent, and it's probably the worst in the African American continent. I have about 120 African American subjects from a church in Atlanta. And the rate of dialysis, they're about 2/3 of the people in the dialysis unit because they're predisposed. And you mentioned diet and all that. Well, the endothelium, the lining in the artery, rules everything. The moment that is no longer functioning normally, blood pressure goes up, you're becoming insulin resistant, which drives that. And then anything that was there potentially underneath gets worse. But it's not all diet and exercise, because my wife has Lp(a), and although it's only 20 to 25% of the population, if you survive a heart attack and you're in cardiac rehab, it's 54%. 54%. How's that enrichment possible? The expert, in my opinion, in the world is
Steven, you gotta stop rocking because it's making your camera freeze.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll hold my hands down.
You gotta hold steady.
Yeah, Sotirios Semikis is at University of California, San Diego, works at Scripps. He's probably the world's authority on that. And he's been using niacin for 35 years. And he'll tell you, when people come to him, because he's running the lipid clinic, he calls it an Lp(a) clinic. Well, why would he do that? Because 48% of them under his referral, which is through the cardiology group at that hospital, have Lp(a). And almost nobody measured it until the last 2 years. And then a lot of them will say, well, I don't measure it because there's nothing to treat it, or put them on a statin, which is the biggest mistake you can make. And my wife has it, and I had to learn how to use niacin to lower it with her 25 years ago. And if you control Lp(a), you control the whole lipoprotein spectrum. It's just a little more difficult with Lp(a) because it's genetic. It doesn't respond to diet and exercise. It hits a plateau when a man is 7 months old. It's elevated in a woman because of the gene, but it almost doubles in some women, like my wife, once they pass through menopause. So it's an interesting little particle, but there's ways of lowering it. Most people don't even know that you can. And they put them on the wrong medication.
So right then and there. Okay. First of all, let's see, what is a lipid clinic? What do you do? Let's just say niacin's not in the picture just yet, because this is, I think, this is a big weapon in your arsenal. Yet right. I know people are afraid of it, and it's not a, pharmaceutical. So you're probably, poo-pooed for even mentioning it. But what is a lipid clinic? who's coming there. They were, I mean, let's just say they didn't have all those crazy labs that an advanced cardiac profile might show you some answers. But now with the lipid clinic, what kind of treatment are they getting? How often are they going?
Well, Lipid Clinic is nothing more than a prevention clinic, and it's evolved to the point where these more precise revealing labs aren't just the lipids anymore. You're looking at much better markers all the way around for inflammation, oxidation, renal failure, and so forth. And it's gotten more extensive every year. And the technology has added a lot of scope to finding out what the cause is, the root cause for what's going on. Referring to lipids, cholesterol, lipoproteins. That's the crux of most of it, because when you have dyslipidemia, your lipoproteins are out of whack. It sickens the endothelial lining. You no longer can maintain a normal blood pressure. It affects every organ in the body, and it's one of the main contributors to loss of renal function and cerebral function and fatty liver and so forth and so forth. And it's not just carbohydrates and our diet. If you're predisposed genetically, a lot of things contribute to that. My brother and I have a methylation deficiency, which is really common. It's about 40% of people with hypertension. You put them on a drug and it comes down 10 points. You correct the methylation deficiency and they go down 20, 30, 40 points. And quite often it's something natural that works at least as good as the drug. And a good example,
yes,
amlodipine, probably one of the top 2 or 3 drugs prescribed for blood pressure. I always suspected it was damaging kidneys because it doesn't dilate the exit artery, the E for exit, out of the glomerulus. The blood goes in, the balloon gets tighter. If you don't drain off the pressure, you got a problem. It causes proteinuria. And they determined that the risk for adverse kidney events, including mortality, goes up 35%. And I was on the phone today with 3 people, and the doctor all had them on amlodipine. I said, don't even get into a dialogue. Show them the press release, print off the peer-reviewed journal. And no kidney patient should be on a dihydropyridine. And there's a list of them. And amlodipine's the drug du jour. And these people were getting 5-point drops. You know, that's not significant. Besides, lowering the blood pressure isn't the whole game. If you're damaging the kidneys, they need to be on a safer hypertension medication like an RAS drug. The old ACE inhibitors are good. The ARBs are probably better tolerated. They actually reduce proteinuria. Why would you put them on a drug that makes it worse? Well, the number came down. It's madness, but that's kind of how the healthcare system is. It's painting by the numbers. And I hate to say it, but unless you're in a concierge practice getting care, it's the insurance company that's calling the shots, because you're very limited to what you can do unless the insurance company is going to pay for it or reimburse for it. And they've yet to come up with programs that pay for prevention other than Medicare shared savings programs. So it falls to people like me and some of these doctors that refer to me that do prevention to catch the root cause early and correct it before it becomes fulminant disease, fully developed. And kidney disease is a good example of that. It's a vascular disease. And I have a little graphic for the patient. It's a wagon wheel. And here's blood pressure, hypertension, and here's diabetes or prediabetes. Well, that's not the whole ball game. They all have low thyroid. They all have acidosis. Quite a few, about a third that come to me have an autoimmune disorder. And then Lp(a) is causal. The gene matches up with the frequency of kidney disease a lot because that's the most virulent cholesterol particle. It's incredibly dangerous. And if you look for every spoke on that wheel, the kidney disease is the hub in the middle of that wheel. And I explain to the patient, you might have reasonably well-controlled blood pressure and you're taking something for your blood sugar, but what about the rest of the picture? They all have low thyroid, and the blood work doesn't reflect that. I use an old protocol from Dr. Broda Otto Barnes. It's like 50 years ago. He knew back then the blood work wasn't reliable. Well, how do you diagnose that there's low thyroid? Well, there's symptoms, that's qualitative. But all you do is put a thermometer under your armpit before you get out of bed. Don't wake up all the way. Do it calmly and quickly. have a timer set for 10 minutes. When it goes off, if your basal temperature, which is what you're capturing, axillary, is 97.8 degrees or lower, you have low thyroid. Well, why would you go to so much trouble? Because the lowest dose will reduce proteinuria and raise the GFR. Why not? They needed it anyway.
Okay, so question, is your wagon wheel description you just used, is that more or less the description of metabolic syndrome? I mean,
not exactly, but metabolic syndrome is probably one of the first things that appears in most individuals in metabolic disorders. And it's hard to say. It's random whether the blood pressure goes south first or the lipids go south first or the glucose. But we're a society here in North America that's addicted to carbohydrates, probably more than fentanyl or heroin. I mean, who has not had carbohydrates today or at all in the last month? We all do. And it starts when you're a little kid, because fast food wasn't real prevalent when I was very young. I'm 71, but if I sat still and behaved in Sunday school, we'd go to McDonald's. That was my reward. And that made my endothelium impaired for probably a couple hours. And after a decade or two of that, I was starting to become metabolic syndrome, which is really insulin resistance. And when the amount of insulin that normally would correct your glucose after a meal increases the requirement because it's not getting the glucose into the cells, you have to make more and more insulin. And then you see all the things that cascade off of that, the dyslipidemia, the prediabetes, of course, and blood pressure and so forth. You see a lot of other things going on because there's always chronic inflammation, a lot of cellular abnormalities, oxidation and so forth. And you add in all the genetic inherited stuff, you've got a time bomb in some people. And when I see individuals who are referred to me, a lot of the people refer to me are very sophisticated, but not always. I have to dig through what is there and then request more information so I can really get to the bottom of it. And there's often clues before I get the hardcore lab work that something else is going on, like family history. If it's horrible, they probably have familial hyperlipidemia. And if they've got that, they probably have LP(a) too. And, my go-to list is not that extensive. And not to bring up niacin again, but the only way to shrink.
That was my next question. Yeah. So let me just frame that really quickly. So I know you work just from doing a little preparation for the show today. You work with some of these giant warrior. You've got an arsenal in your pocket that not in the pharmaceutical company's probably fan club.
No.
But you have these amazing, which is cool as anything, right? Because I'd like you to please describe, you have some warrior ways that are inexpensive and available to all of us that help counteract some of these high and low numbers. So do tell.
I'll give you a brief history. When we started out with the lipid clinics, first of all, Blue Cross Blue Shield finally got around to analyzing our data. We were 5 years into it. Lowest admission for coronary syndrome, acute coronary syndrome, heart attack in the whole system. One heart attack when we opened the clinics and none for 5 years. All the adjunct patients were symptom-free within 6 months. And they documented it. And it just told me, well, I guess we were right about the niacin because we were stopping Lipitor and Crestor right and left. That'll make a cardiologist just freak out. Well, what we didn't know was that we were using far lower doses than Castelli and all these old timers at Capuzzi. Those guys mastered this. And of course, they had more time to talk to patients back then. Managed care hadn't gotten as ugly as it is now, but there's ways around that. We finally saw a lot of guys who worked at General Electric, Bucyrus, Erie, steam shovels, and hammer mill paper. That's back when Erie had a lot of industry. And then when there was a crash, there was a couple crashes. A lot of these guys not only lost their jobs, they lost their pensions. And I had a 75-year-old who was working at McDonald's. And he couldn't afford the co-pay for anything. And Dr. Dave said to me, why don't we switch him to plain niacin? Well, that's what Castelli and all these Alzheimer's use. We were using prescription niaspan. I said, that's easy enough. They're already tolerating it. They've been on it for a few months. And, a half a gram is 3 cents. My wife takes 4 grams, I take 4.5. So you're talking about the cheapest therapy. It's by far the most versatile. Parkinson's, shrink glioblastoma and cancerous tumors, um, psoriasis, you name it. I mean, niacin hits more genes in the body than any known molecule, and they don't function normally without at least a small amount. But certain pathologies, it's maybe the only thing that works. And fatty liver, they tested 150 FDA-approved medications. And guess which one cleared fatty liver better than anything else? Niacin. Will that compel most providers to use it? No, they don't have time to do it. Even if they know how to do it, you can't just say, here, Mr. Jones, here's your niacin, come back in 2 weeks. That'll never
because
work.
you have to help them, right? Because you have to help them through. It's a little tricky to get niacin on board at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love doing it because you're fighting the good fight. If I have a patient on the phone, first encounter, and I talk to them for an hour, they got it straight. I tell them, I show them if I have a Zoom meeting, and I give them printed materials, and then I review it once a week to keep following up with them, sometimes twice a week. Adjust things so they'll succeed. After 2 weeks, and Castelli told me that, they're home free. It's all downhill from there. Then you can start titrating it up. And when you get up to around 1.5 grams, the lab work starts to look pretty amazing. Nobody anymore knows that because they don't use it. But the whole lipid panel starts to go in the right direction. All the good particles go up, all the bad ones go down. LP(a) takes a while to drop. My wife, when she hit 4 grams, she had about a 43% drop. But I was a little startled. This is the learning part of it because I observe things and try to piece it together. The next panel, it was 63% lower. And less than 2 years later, just this past March, I ordered a panel online, paid cash for it. Forget the insurance, they're not going to help us. And it was 75% lower. And some guys are getting an 88% drop. Every quote in all the current literature in the last 15 years is no better than 20%. That is such a crock because that's people. Here's how I describe that. You pay to have your kids taught how to swim because you want them to be safe. And someday you get out of work early and you go in and there's this kind of stern instructor with a whistle bossing people around, and you warm up to them and say, hey, show me a stroke, like the side stroke. I don't even know what that looks like. And he turns to you, and matter of fact, he says, I just teach people how to swim. I really don't know how to swim myself. How much longer would you keep your kids in that program? That's
not so much.
Everybody has an opinion, especially cardiologists, but none of them really know how to use it. Not anymore. Most of the guys who did are either retired or they passed away. But I was lucky because 25 years ago, they were still active and niacin didn't have the onus it does now. I love using it because it fixes so many things. I hear this every time within a week. I can think more clearly. My memory's coming back. When I go for a walk, I can go for another half an hour without getting tired. Dr. Fox is part of my company. His bone-on-bone knee was so bad he could barely walk across the living room. Now he does a 2-mile walk on Virginia Beach every day because it's very effective on inflammation and pain. And it does a lot of stuff. If you look at the old literature, they couldn't understand how people with no medication change were going from low thyroid to euthyroid, which is normal. And cholesterol and niacin were the only thing they were implementing. Now I know why. It took me a long time to figure it out, but niacin's now the latest thing for growth hormone. Kids with stunted growth. Well, the growth hormone normalizes the deiodinase, which enables T4 to convert to T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. And when I saw that, my head exploded and went, another thing on the niacin list. It's like God's Swiss Army knife. And I know I go off on niacin about everybody.
No, but it's really, really, really cool in a world of pharmaceutical domination. I mean, this is what this is making me think of, Stephen. And I know you got a couple other old school, very effective tools in your bag that I'd like you to bring up. But, it's making me think of, I saw something just the other day, about where we are on this planet and all the things that we're doing. But, if you recall, the Jetsons,
yes.
right? Remember that? So in a world where the Jetsons seem to be all that, I
Yeah.
think it's getting cooler to be the Flintstones. Like,
Yeah,
I think it's getting cool to be the Flintstones again.
and Fred would pedal his car with his bare feet to the floor.
Yeah.
Of
So-
the car. Don't get me
so-
going on old
Well,
cartoons.
what you're saying is some of these things provided for us on this earth that were provided in their simplest forms work. So what else do you have that are
Okay.
household norms?
Thank you for leading me to that. I have to come up with little clever snippets. Patients like that. If it's like a story, there's a little humor there. They remember that better than anything technical. When I'm talking to a patient, it's like talking to my brother who never went to college. Layman's terms. I say, look, everything the drug companies make aren't new ideas. They don't invent things. Red yeast rice became Mevacor, and now you have all these synthetic statins. Another good example, the lilac plant, I believe it's the lilac plant, became metformin. Well, it's got a lot of undesirable effects. Well, I couldn't tolerate it because I didn't want my insulin resistance become full-blown diabetes. I'm 71. Well, it turns out berberine works just as good and there's no side effects. And instead of screwing up your gut health like metformin does, because you're essentially blocking glucose from getting into the rest of the body, where does the glucose go? It's in the intestine, and all the bad bugs feed on it. And the good bugs want fiber. Berberine is very rich in fiber, and it's bacteriostatic. The gut health looks better on berberine than it did beforehand. But the absorption's poor, like Morse durables. So you have to take a little milk thistle with it. It's amazing. You don't even know you're taking it. There's almost no threshold to the dose. There's some old wives' tales about it that have been since proven wrong, but it lowers ApoB. It's a PCSK9 inhibitor. Repatha, Praluent. Niacin at 3 grams is better than Repatha and Praluent. Who would know this stuff? Well, God gave us all we need. And when I see a new drug come out, I reverse engineer it. I go to PubMed and find out when all I had was a code name like Merck MK-2999 or whatever. And then I look, where did the idea came from? Well, they look at a whole bunch of plants or something out of the sea and found an active component that was good for some metabolic abnormality. In the case of the statins, it was red yeast rice. Well, only 1% of red yeast rice is HMG-CoA reductase, which is a statin. What about the rest of it? Well, one of the things I hate about statins is it raises LP(a), and now they know it increases your risk, irregardless of anything else. Red yeast rice lowers it 23%. Well, that's not dramatic, but it's better than making it worse. And the tolerability is about the same. It's a BID. You have to take half early in the day and half later in the day. But I do use it on occasion, but usually I don't need to. And thyroid medication is a great cholesterol drug. A lot of doctors have forgotten that. And it's not a cholesterol drug. It's a particle drug. It's a PCSK9 inhibitor. So you got berberine, that's a mild one, thyroid supplementation, particularly natural thyroid, because all the stuff that God put in the gland is there, not just T4. And they do better on it. And it knocks down LP(a) about 32%.
Wow.
There's no other drug available now that does that. Niacin will get it down between 50 and 75%. But if I need more horsepower, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to have them do basal temperatures. I got to document that they've got low basal temperatures. And I always recommend natural thyroid. What can be expensive to get Armor or NP thyroid. Copay's $40 a month. I felt better on it than I did on T4 for sure. And now they got New Zealand beef thyroid, and there's 200 doses for about $40, including shipping. And they give you a little microscopic spoon. I bought the scale because it's a powder, which is not ideal, but it's so damn cheap. Probably 20 people are taking it now. And it improves so much stuff. They don't feel cold. The veterinarian in West Virginia just raved about it. She called me 2 days later and said, I'm always losing hair. When I get out of the shower, it's all around the drain. She goes, there's no hair in the drain. She goes, I feel sharper. She goes, I'm just as sharp at 5 o'clock before the end of the day as I was when I had a cup of coffee in the morning. And they feel warmer. They're not cold all the time. Those are the symptoms. But when you look at the lab work, it's like, wow. I mean, that's why
Stephen,
I read so much, you know.
what about the famous, all very famous, regardless of what century you're from, baking soda? Tell me about the beauties and pros and cons and benefits of the infamous box
I didn't.
of baking soda.
Excuse me. I'm getting over a respiratory virus. This is the best I felt in about 10 days, and I didn't want to blow
good.
to your coughing.
Good.
All I focused on was cardiovascular. That was where my training started anyway. My dad came in, and some other guy in town, I won't name him, dropped the ball, and he ridiculed me because I wanted better blood work. He says, "Oh, your dad's cardiovascular health is fine, blah, blah, blah." I got mad. He came down to Dave's office, and we drew blood on him, and we corrected everything. There was a lot of stuff that was overlooked. But he had a heart attack anyway. It was a little late. He had 3 stents, quintuple bypass 2 years later. That was in the winter because they go to Florida to get away from the 12 feet of snow we get here. And they get a call, and he's having an aortic valve repair, annuloplasty, and a quintuple bypass. He comes back to Erie for the summer, comes in. I get a phone call from Dave, Dr. Dave, and he says, "I hate to tell you, your dad's got renal insufficiency. He's in renal failure." Well, it was an act of God, 2009. I was working in and around dialysis centers, and I met Dr. William Finn, who's now retired, one of the most famous nephrologists there is. You had to buy his textbook. It was like John Guyton. You had to buy his textbook. If you're a nephrologist, you had to buy the book on phosphorus control, which is a big issue with kidney disease. So I had a pretty good idea what to do because he befriended me and kind of showed me the ropes. He showed me the dirty secret nephrology. We'll leave that go. So I told my mom, before he eats any meal, you sit him down. And we already had him on 2 grams of niacin and a large dose of fish oil, no statin. And I could almost hear the cardiologist go, "Oh," you know. His panel looked way better than the statin would have anyway. And we just added the chelator, which is Tums, calcium carbonate. Calcium separates from the carbonate, attaches the phosphorus. Now you have an insoluble metal salt that goes out. We have a bowel movement. I didn't know niacin also prevents it from being absorbed. Phosphorus is a primary toxin you got to get rid of. And they all have acidosis, all of them, 89% of acidosis. So my mom, here's the funny part. I didn't know it came in a tablet, sodium bicarbonate. It was baking soda. And that's not the cleanest form, but we took the yellow box out of the cupboard, and that was Dad's new box of Arm & Hammer. And the doctors I work with all said, "We need a tip sheet." Because what happened was his GFR was 19. When he hit 15, they put you on dialysis or on the list for transplant. Depends on the patient. And he was just going to get worse. He already had congestive heart failure, early stage, not too bad. It kept going up. The GFR went up to 61 within 26 months. Now, we weren't checking proteinuria back then, but I guarantee you that was going backwards too. There's no question about it. And I'm like, oh, I got a new toy, kidney disease. Let's get really good at it. And all the doctors I work with, that's now taken over 2/3 of my activity is kidney disease.
No, kidding.
Right, 6 new ones this week. And I do a lot of follow-up. If you hold their hand frequently, explain things to them, assuage their anxieties, that goes a long way. The whole
So is that,
psychological
Stephen,
part.
is that a lost art? I mean, this is the second or third time that you've referred to the time you spent with your patients. Is that a lost art? Is it easier, easy button to write a prescription
It's
than to spend the time and educate and
time with
show them
patients
the way?
is officially a dead thing. But that's why I get so much referral, because they know I don't charge too much. But the patients get to know me because I talk to them frequently. And then it's kind of like being a cheerleader. When you get the second set of blood work, make a big fuss. Oh my God, never seen better. It's not necessarily truthful, but they want to know that the effort was worth it.
It's hard. They changed their ways. They've listened and they've tried and they've changed their ways. So I think cheerleading goes a long way.
You have to be clever too, and have catchy phrases. Like I'll say, you know what, God made niacin cause a hot flash? He's testing your faith. that plays really well. And I say, you know,
That's a good one.
you spend all week creating these miracles, you know, the planets, planet Earth and us. Saturday night, even God gets tired. That was the 6th day, and he was exhausted. And then niacin came into his head, and that's why he attached the hot flash. He wanted you to buck up. And he was so proud of himself, he took Sunday off for the rest of the time. I tell you, my crowd, the older
Good
people, they all
stories.
go to church. They like that. They know there's humor there, but I'm making a point, you know?
Yeah.
It's worth it. Don't be a baby like the Bible says. When I was a child, I did childish things. Be a grown-up. I'll show you how to get rid of the side effect. Just make it part of your routine. You don't forget to eat every day. Well, don't forget to take your niacin when you eat. That's when you do it. It's easy. Becomes program 2-3 weeks in. And then they're all about new blood work. I want to see how it's doing. I want to see how it's doing. So let's just wait. Give it 3 months. It takes about a month to titrate the niacin. But then when they get that second set of blood work, that's when you close them. That's when the deal is consummated.
That's the closer.
You show them all the stuff that got better, and you go into detail about every biomarker and say, oh, by the way, your liver function test went down. Everybody thinks, most doctors think it's bad. No, I use immediate release. It actually cleans the liver out. And they usually feel better. That's and I prompt that. I say, have you noticed anything? Like, can you walk further now? Do you feel more clear-headed? Oh, yeah. I didn't know if it was the niacin. Yes, it is. The niacin's so complex to get them to the first month that I put most of my effort on that, the first encounter. I keep following up on that, but then you roll in the other components. The sodium bicarb in the Tums, it's pretty much a given. Most of them need it. And I think I sent you that video clip. It's a testimonial from Valerie. Oh, she's so cool. I mean,
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
oh, I say I have a lot
Stephen-
of gold star patients. She's got the platinum.
She was amazing,
that-
which I'm certain they're probably stacking up. I was going to switch
Yeah.
gears. Ramona, did you want to hop in?
Yeah,
was
just
gonna-
one little question.
Okay.
You're doing a great job. I'm just a good spectator. Both of you know a lot more than I do. The question I have is that, you know, that a lot of Indians have this little A, what do you call it? Lipid.
LP little a.
Yeah. LP little a. That is a good test and a good biomarker for Indians to check it out? Or
Oh, absolutely. And there's some pioneers from India. A friend of mine, I haven't seen him in a while. Enos, he's in Chicago. I think he's
I know
retired.
him very well. Dr.
Oh.
Enos.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was all about niacin. And
Is
I
he
went
still
to a couple
alive?
of-
I have not seen him for a while, but
I think so. And this
Yeah.
sounds kind of funny, but he takes niacin, so I'm pretty certain he's still alive. It'll improve longevity.
he's a
Well,
very good friend of mine. And
yeah.
you know what I did was we had a big conference I put together in Boca Raton with the Indian Cardiology Association. At the time, he was my speaker. Yeah, he's a Bayer aspirin sponsored it, and yeah, I'm very good friend of mine. Yeah, I used to bump into him. I don't see him recently, but yeah.
I had a program in Youngstown, which is about an hour and a half from where I live, and there was no Indian food nearby. So one of the guys had to get in their car and go to a tandoori restaurant, and had all these foil covered trays in his back seat. It was like they're all sitting there waiting to eat, and we come in with the trays, and really good crowd. I mean, there was probably 200 people there, and they all had questions about LP-A. They know. Most doctors who are of your heritage know LP-A, but it's not frequently ordered. And we started testing everybody in 2004, everybody. And all the statistics held up. Bad family history, a male with a heart attack at a young age, roughly 20%, but it depends on what you consider elevated. I think if it's 30 milligrams per deciliter, which is roughly 70 nanomoles, treat them, you know, because if you don't know how to use niacin, take an LP-A patient and practice. Learn how to get them on niacin. And that's a patient that's motivated anyway. They know they got bad family history.
What do you
And then-
think of? Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and lo and behold, everything else in the lipid panel will look amazing because it just knocks them all out. It's the only monotherapy that moves all the known lipoproteins in the correct direction. the only
Wow.
one. And they're
Wow.
trying to do it with 2 or 3 drugs now.
What about aspirin 81 milligrams? That is it effective, you think?
Well, the dose for platelet suppression, and you end up with a lot of sick platelets that have to be regenerated at 120 days. That's not a bad thing per se, but to get rid of the side effect, you need a 325. And that's why Costelli told me to use Alka-Seltzer. And that tip sheet, I don't know if I mentioned it, was called the Alka-Sauce protocol, because applesauce mutes all 3, the prostaglandin, which is what the aspirin's for in the Alka-Seltzer. But there's a serotonin and a histamine pathway. Some people still have a hot flash because those are more in play. Well, 3 tablespoons of applesauce and 1 Alka-Seltzer. We had 100% compliance once we started that. Before that, it was a nightmare. And you don't need to do it forever.
Really?
You don't need to do it forever.
I love
And I-
Alka-Seltzer. I take almost, that's my regular medicine to go.
It'll get rid of a headache really fast. But now you're muting the 3 pathways that can cause a hot flash and pretty much withdraw to 2 weeks. In fact, I have it in print. Costelli had said he's a wonderful person. He died January last year, which was a sad day for me. But I learned so much from him. And remind me, I'll send you both his, sort of like his autobiography interview with American Journal of Cardiology. It said, an interview with the editor, William P. Costelli, blah, blah, blah. And they showed us football pictures from high school. And when everybody was young at the Framingham, there's a black and white picture, and they all got their lab coats. All he talked about when he talked about clinic was niacin, the drug he talked about. Almost all he talked about. And he said, we love niacin in our clinic because it tells us which patients are faithful. You know,
But there is a breeding
I know.
problem. What do you think? How
Pardon
do
me?
you handle the breeding problem with the people with all the, like a lot of people have this, Indians have this breeding kind of thing also, kind of aspirin. If you take a aspirin, it's
Oh, well, ironically, you're not using it chronically. You're using what I don't even tell them to do it every day like we did 25 years ago. I tell them use it as needed. The bottom line is don't let the hot flash cause you to quit. That's the whole point. I don't want them to quit. So when you feel it come on, if you've had an alcoholic drink, spicy food, hot beverages, that can provoke it. I hate to say it, sex will bring it on, but I don't know anybody who would have mentioned that. It's vasodilatation from some other source will exacerbate and bring on a hot flash. Well, that's why I tell them have an Alka-Seltzer in your purse for the ladies, and the men put it in your wallet. And sometimes they call me 3 years after I last talked to them, and hey, I say, let me guess. You needed the Alka-Seltzer because you were celebrating. How'd you know? Was it like a graduation, New Year's Eve? Yeah. Alcohol. Oh, yeah. I was having, yeah. That's why I told you. Leave it in your wallet. It'll be there when you need it.
I always take it in my wallet,
He was so proud of himself. Yeah. He says, my friends thought I would lay out in the sun too long. And he said, just like I told him, sneak into the men's room, not to use the facilities. You put the Alka-Seltzer in the water, calm down, sit in the booth, put the seat down, just, sit there and drink it. You won't even get through the half a bottle, and then the hot flash went away. And I said, did you do like I told you, go out and have another drink with impunity? Because now you're protected. Yeah, oh yeah. It was a great evening. I didn't ruin his evening. He didn't quit the niacin. Everybody's happy. And
I didn't know the whole medical aspect of it, but it is always helping me whenever I eat a lot of spicy food or some couple of drinks, just take alcohol. And it is really amazing.
I think a lot of this, I probably inherited. My mom was the best teacher for kids with learning disabilities in the whole school district. And people say, you're a good teacher. I'm like, yeah, I got it from my mom. Because they have to trust you. You have to have the skill to communicate these ideas. And 90% of them do really good. I mean, 90% of my chronic kidney disease go backwards, a stage. And Valerie went back almost 3 stages. She's still drifting in the right direction, drifting. Like her proteinuria went from 333 to 60, 83% rapidly. Because I finally figured out it was all about the hypertension. Well, I gave her the new thing. We call it the blood pressure defender, because the company's Health Defender. And this isn't a commercial presentation, but it's got 7 nitric oxide generators. 2 are
Wow.
long-term generation. 3 of them directly make it quickly, niacin, red beetroot extract. But there's a lot of people like me that have MTHFR deficiency, and they have hypertension because they can't make nitric oxide. The only way to correct it is to engineer the ability to restore some of that methylation enzyme that they're missing. B2 does it. There's a 25-year-long follow-up study in University of Ulster in Ireland. And MTHFR normal, nothing. Heterozygous, nothing. People like me and my brother, blood pressure came down 8 to 12 points. So I put a little B2 in there. You know, that's what they use. They use about a penny's worth. And methylfolate and L-arginine, L-citrulline. Now, let me tell you, it doesn't screw up the efferents in the glomerulus, which is what's dangerous about amlodipine.
Dr. McConnell, you're saying about niacin. You can, is it over the counter that you can take it? Is it like a once a day?
Essentially, and I'm re-engineering my verbiage around that. These aren't supplements or vitamins. What they really are is they're God's therapies that are largely undiscovered. Well, niacin is such a fabulous therapy. If you're using something that's not a patented prescription drug, it's a nutraceutical. I mean, aspirin is a nutraceutical. And if you know the entire spectrum of what they can bring to the table, I call it like shooting empty cans on a fence. If I can fire 1 bullet and knock down 6 of them, that's thrifty. I don't need 6 bullets. And niacin's like that because it hits so many targets. Sometimes I'm just waiting for the niacin to kick in because there might be something residual I might have treated separately, but
what are the side effects? What are the side effects of it? What are the side effects of niacin?
We've been talking
Mainly
about the big one.
Yeah, the hot flash. They call it flushing. It's vasodilatation. Occasionally, not very often, it might drive the homocysteine up. You can fix that pretty easy. Uric acid, but if it's a kidney patient and their function comes back, the uric acid drops anyway. And there's not a whole lot more than that because it's essentially safe if you actually know what you're talking about. Because immediate release never caused liver toxicity. In fact, they're using it for fatty liver. And it causes diabetes. That's an old myth. There's several endocrinology studies. Some of them were famous endocrinologists. They showed the A1Cs were lower by a 1/4 point in one study, a 1/2 point in another, and a whole point, with no change in diabetes medication. The reason is it takes about 6 months to get to that point. What's going on? The lipotoxicity has been killed. Because niacin will get rid of the fatty acids, which cause insulin resistance. And if you're taking it with meals, you blunt it at the right timing. You don't take it fasting, you take it during the meal. Now that meal load isn't going to affect fatty acid production, triglycerides, and a lot of the assembly of the lipoproteins. You just cut it off right there. And fish oil is good for the enteric, the chylomicra, the big giant ones. They end up in the liver anyway. But all the series that most people are aware of come out of the liver. That's what niacin works on. It not only mutes the effect of adipocytes leaking fats, which generates more ApoBs, because if there's too much triglycerides going through the liver, they have to be packaged up. So we end up with a lot of small, dense particles with very little cholesterol because the enzymes remove the triglycerides. Well, niacin changes that whole pathway. Plus, nobody knew until recently it's a PCSK9 inhibitor. Makes more receptors on the liver to yank those particles out. And the more niacin they take, the lower the ApoB is. And it's kind of fun to watch. It's a progressive display of its effect. Lp(a) doesn't drop overnight. The PCSK9 will pull it down about 20, 30%, kind of like Repatha or Praluent. They're no more than 17%. But when the gene is suppressed, that's what happened with my wife. 41%, same dose, next panel 63%, next panel 75%. That gene just keeps getting pushed down. That's pretty cool. That's what the new Lp(a) drugs do. But who's going to afford them? If you don't have insurance, you're out of luck. What's a copay? Probably like Repatha and Praluent, $100 a month. Yeah. I can fix it for $5 a month, full price.
Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, sir. It's a
Mic
very
drop.
truly educational. I learned now I became a patient of yours. Now I learned.
Yeah, we all going to be a patient of Stephen's. Get the niacin out. So what a fabulous, fabulous learning experience has been here with you this evening, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I feel like, a theme with what Ramon and I talk about here on this show is it seems that always the simple, the less is more, the things that we've had for gazillions of years are coming back up and getting right on the main stage here and dancing around, and people like you are showing like look at the numbers. I mean, this is not some massive rocket science, right? I mean, the physical human body is crazy rocket science, but thank you for bringing the old tried and true to the main stage.
Thank you.
It needs to be.
Thank you for having me here. And I have to say, most of the pharmacopoeia in the natural series really bargain. I mean, that beef thyroid is grass-fed beef that walk around in the field all day. They're healthy cows. It's the biggest dairy ranch in the world. And they have a clinical facility to harvest the thyroid. It comes in a powder, but the lowest dose is about 10 cents a day. You can't get NP thyroid for 10 cents a day.
You can't get a coffee.
And the patients, the patients they don't complain. And I need like 140 milligrams of desiccated, natural thyroid.
So what is your website?
What is your
website? What is your website?
It's HealthDefender.care. And there's a lot of stuff in there.
Can you put that website
HealthDefender.care.
How about this? Can you read that?
No, you have to be
no, because it's backwards.
Oh, that's right.
Oh. That's okay. Listen, our guests will follow you on LinkedIn. They'll find you at your website, and they might come knocking on your practice door, because someone who spends the time to speak to the people like they're people and teach them and educate them and move them along the way, that's just huge. Thank you for being part of the Team Flintstone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting up with me.
Fabulous. Thank you, Susan. You did a great, outstanding job, both of you.
God bless you both.
God bless you too. Thank you both. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Science is real. We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.